So good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Eric Carlson. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Inver Grove Heights. And tonight we are kicking off our comprehensive park plan, or the update of our comprehensive park plan. We last created a plan back in 2009. So it's been a little while since we created the plan, and the plan is really our park plan for the entire city. Tonight we're going to focus most of the conversation on parks in the Northwest area, which obviously we don't have any yet, but that's what we're focusing our conversation on tonight. I will be giving a little bit of a broad overview of the entire park planning process in the beginning of the slides here, but most of tonight is about the Northwest Area Park. I want to thank Matt Peterson, Mike Robinette, and Kelly Staples for helping get this coordinated. They solicited some questions in advance, so I've built some of those questions and responses and information into this PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully we're able to answer as many of the questions people have as possible. So again, we're starting our Parks, Recreation, Trail, and Facilities Plan process. We had planned to start this back in March, April, but then COVID came and kind of took over just about everything that we all do. And so we had to delay that. So we're trying to get it restarted. Would have liked to have done this face-to-face in person, but wasn't sure how many people were going to be interested in coming to a meeting. So we decided, after talking to Matt, Mike, and Kelly, that maybe we should do something virtually. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Again, Eric Carlson, the Parks and Rec Director. There's my email address and my phone number. If afterwards you have questions or comments you want to call or send me an email, I'm happy to talk to you or correspond via email. What we are working on overall is to develop a clear 10 to 15-year vision for what our park and recreation system is going to look like. And tonight we're providing an overview and focusing on parks in the Northwest area. I'm sure we've all gotten pretty good at what these virtual meetings are all about now, but just as a friendly reminder, please mute your microphone so that we don't hear all the background noise. And if you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll try to do our best to respond to those questions. So I start a lot of my presentations with just what the city's mission and our values are. And so the city's mission is the mission of the City of Inver Grove Heights is to provide services and facilities that enhance the quality of life in our vibrant community. And we value ethical decisions, engaged people, and excellence by setting high standards. The City Council tries to frame its decisions with the ability to remain fiscally stable, improve or stabilize our operational efficiencies, improving our customer service, and staying attentive to our regulatory environment. And then we have a vision statement as well, and that is a welcoming community on the river with varied landscapes that provide provides a safe environment, quality built and sustainable infrastructure, which supports local business, a variety of housing, and promotes culture and recreation. So the 2020 comprehensive park planning process has a number of pieces, and that includes looking at the community assessment, looking at demographics, what are some of the changes that are happening in the parks and recreation field, what are some of the trends, then some system analysis of benchmarking, how does our system compare to some of our peers, what type of level of service do we want to have, looking at the community and engaging the community to create a vision for what the park and recreation system is going to be. And then it would include a number of items such as athletic fields, park services, capital improvement planning, etc. All of that will become part of the plan once we get through this process, which will take a number of months and up to a year. So a big part of that is trying to figure out and listening to what residents want. What do residents want our park and recreation system to be? So we've tried to set up meetings and try to make them convenient for people to attend so that we can get feedback from folks about what their dreams are, what they like, what they may not like about the current system, and what they want the future system to look like. Tonight, we're obviously sitting at Monday, July 20th, having this virtual meeting on Zoom. But we have a number of other meetings over the course of the next month and a half, where we're going to try to meet at all of our different facilities and all of our different parks so that we can collect feedback from folks. There'll also be some online opportunities for people to participate as well, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. Everyone should have received, or if you haven't yet, you should be receiving the newest edition of the city's Insights newsletter, and this schedule is posted in that Insights newsletter. So when it comes to planning parks, our goal is to serve residents within half mile of a park. And so our goal is to try to provide a park within a half mile of where people live. And so this is a map of the current city and of the current park system. And these are half-mile circles around all of our parks. So that is our goal. It doesn't mean we have to. It doesn't mean we will guarantee that we will. But our goal is to try to provide a park within a half mile of where people live. And you can tell by this area right here, the northwest area, we haven't started to do that yet. And so that's what we're going to be focused on tonight.
There we go, right there.
So why don't we go forward?
Some people have their audio.
I just need my kids to be able to play with the flower.
For some reason, my mouse is stuck. 1 second here.
Hey, can everybody mute their phone if you're not muted?
Not just
Huh. Give me 1 second here. I'll bear with me on this little technical difficulty that I'm having. Huh. I can't see where my mouse is, so I can turn off this annotate. Wow. My apologies. There we go. Sorry about that. Now I need to erase that, I suppose. All right. Also, as part of the park and recreation system, we are working to build a trail and sidewalk network that will connect neighborhoods, connect parks, and connect commercial areas. Our existing park and recreation system looks a little bit like this, and I know that's hard to read. More information can be found on our website, but we have currently we have 27 parks, about 677 acres of parkland, 26 miles of bituminous trail. The Veterans Memorial Community Center is about 144,000 square feet. We have a 27-hole municipal golf course known as Inver. And inside of our park system, we have 15 playgrounds, 6 park buildings, 7 picnic shelters. And we also have some regional park amenities found in the city that are owned and operated by Dakota County. That's the Mississippi River Regional Trail and a partially constructed Mendota-Lebanon Regional Trail. So the way in which the city goes about building parks for the most part is through park dedication. Park dedication is a state statute that provides the city with the opportunity to work with developers to secure land or cash in lieu of land. It's applied to the platting process during development when developers come in and let it be known what their development desires are. The city is allowed to either take cash or land for the purposes of building a public parks and trails system. The cash that we take for through park dedication can only be used to make park improvements the first time. So the first time we build a trail, the first time we put in a piece of playground equipment, the first time we build a parking lot for a park, etc. Park dedication can also be used for the costs, legal costs, land purchases, planning and design, grading and construction of park amenities as well. Again, all the first time. Currently, or at the end of December of 2019, the city had a cash balance of $2.1 million in our park dedication fund. Our current single family rate for park dedication is $2,850 per unit. We have some planning documents that help guide us in our park planning process. And again, we are updating our comprehensive park plan that was last done in 2009. We also have, and many of you have seen, the 2014 Northwest Area Comp Plan or Park Plan. And then we have, as the city, we have a 2040 comprehensive guide or comprehensive plan. This is a map of the 2014 Northwest Area Park Plan. In this plan, we assume that we are going to have 5 to 6 parks. We would be adding between 50 and 80 acres of parkland to our existing park system. We would try to connect neighborhoods in the park system through 10 to 15 miles of new trails. We would be taking advantage of the requirement developers have of leaving 20% of their open space undeveloped. Our park planning had us looking at flexible programming needs to respond to the changing demographics we've been experiencing in our community. And we want to be able to use our park and trail system to promote and encourage active living and healthy lifestyles. So in the Northwest area to date, there's been approximately 550 units of housing added since 2007 when the Northwest area started to develop, which means the city has collected approximately $1.6 million in park dedication from those units of housing. As development has happened, we have been building and adding to our sidewalk and trail network, and we are working collaboratively with Dakota County to build the Mendota-Lebanon Regional Greenway. So this map, most people have not seen yet. And in the last several months, staff, the Park Commission, and the City Council have been looking at properties in the Northwest area which we could work at towards acquiring for park purposes. We are planning to try to put a park in each of the quadrants of the 70th and Argenta intersection, that intersection being right here. So we want to have a park in the northwest quadrant of that intersection, the northeast quadrant of that intersection, the southwest quadrant of that intersection, and the southeast quadrant of that intersection. Generally speaking, most of those parks will be between 5 and 10 acres. We're looking for locations that we're going to be able to have access to, the people are going to be able to get to, that the topography is favorable for parkland development. And obviously we are concerned about land costs, making sure that we're paying a fair price and not having to pay exorbitant amounts for the land that we're looking to acquire. So the first quadrant I'm going to talk about is the northwest quadrant of that intersection. And if you look back at this map, it's these two properties right here, identified as properties 1 and property 2. This yellow line is yet to be constructed Mendota-Lebanon Regional Trail. This orange line is an already constructed Mendota-Lebanon Regional Trail.
Eric, is that the location of the Cole property or near there?
This property 1 and 2 is owned by the Cole family. So yes.
That's the Cole property. Okay, thank you.
It is, no problem. So on this map, this is our effort to look from a 30,000 foot planning level, take a quick look at the property to see if we were to own it, what might we be able to do with it from a parks planning perspective. So here you've got the Inver Grove Heights Egan border, basically down the middle of the property, Egan being over here on the west, Inver Grove Heights being over here on the east. This dotted line represents where the Mendota-Lebanon Regional Trail is likely to go in the future. And these other dotted lines would be city trails. We've got a future roadway of Viking Boulevard, or is it Viking Drive, that will be going east to west in the future. And so we show the ability to put in a parking lot, a playground, a shelter, a small court, and then have a small open field in this general area. We're not saying at this time that that's what's going to happen because we haven't had a chance to meet with the neighborhood yet. But from a planning perspective at a very high level, we wanted to be able to convince ourselves that if we owned this property, we could do things that likely the public is going to want to see out of the park system. Right now, Dakota County is leading the acquisition process of the Cole property. And it's likely that the city would work with Dakota County on developing some of the park amenities. So next we're going to go to the northeast quadrant. So that's this quadrant of 70th and Argenta. And we're going to be looking at the northern portion of number 3. So we've been having conversations with the property owner for property number 3. And our discussion has been that we would be interested in acquiring approximately the northern 5.8 acres of this piece of property. The landowner is open to continuing that discussion and has allowed the city to do an appraisal of the property. That appraisal is currently underway, and we hope to be able to get the results of that appraisal back at the end of July. Assuming that the appraisal is reasonable and that it's complete, we would be sitting down with our city council probably in August to share the results of the appraisal with the city council and to get authorization from the city council to make this property owner an offer on their property. Again, we've done kind of this very high level park planning exercise to make sure that if we acquired this piece of property that we'd be able to do something with it from a parks perspective. In here you see the dotted lines representing a trail, a playground, a small court area, a small parking lot off a future roadway that it's likely to go through at some point in the future. So
Eric, I'm bad with my maps. Is that here in Settlers Ridge?
that is the northern half of number 3. So right here. So this is Settlers Ridge right here, is it not, Kelly?
Yep. Okay.
So this is the cul-de-sac that you drive through off of 70th to get into the neighborhood. So it's just to the first right.
That's where we currently come in. So I'm sure that
Yep.
that cul-de-sac and that road is going to go away.
Correct. These will become homes in the future.
Okay.
And this road will go away. So the folks that own properties 3 and 4 own this entire corner actually. So they own all of this property that I'm trying to outline with my mouse right now. So we are talking to them about acquiring 5.8 acres on the northern half of property number 3. Again, they're open to those discussions, and we're waiting to get the appraisal back from our appraising company, and then we will sit down with the council and then hopefully the property owners to see if it's something that they would be willing to sell the city for public park purposes. So now we're in the southwest corner of 70th and Argenta, and we're talking about property 7, which is down here, kind of across from Amana Trail, if you can think about where that tees into Argenta. So again, we're looking at a piece of property that's about 6.4 acres in size. We've had a conversation with the landowner, and he is open to discussions about potentially selling his land to the city for public park purposes. We did have the property appraised. We met with the city council about a week ago. They authorized making the property owner an offer. We have made an offer to the property owner for the property. We have not come to any type of an agreement on what that cost or what that price may be, but we have ongoing negotiations with that property owner about acquiring that property. I would say I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to strike a deal for this piece of property with the property owner in the next 30 to 60 days.
Eric, so this being south of Blackstone Vista here. So again, this is Matt Peterson. A couple of questions. You've mentioned a couple of times Dakota County is doing the negotiating. How does that impact Inver Grove Heights versus Dakota County? So the budget that you said we've got 2.1 million of that 1.6 has been collected as of late. So we've got 2.1. I know 2.1 sounds like a lot, but that doesn't go very far in the terms of purchasing property and then building something. So is the purchase price of this land, say it's, or any of the 4 quadrants that you're talking about, does that come from the 2.1? And then if you're building one here south of Blackstone, what about the Settlers Ridge? What if that one gets approved, and the northeast and the south? I mean, do we have enough money for all 4 quadrants?
So let me clarify something. The county has taken the lead on the negotiations for the coal property and the coal property only. The city is on its own negotiating for this piece of property, which is property number 3, and this piece of property, which is property number 7. I'm going to get into park development costs here in a slide or two, so that should answer most of your other questions, and probably easier to address the rest of those questions as I show the slide related to costs or likely costs for development, if that's okay.
Great.
Director,
Perfect.
quick
Thanks.
question on
Yeah.
on top of the Matt's question here. I do see the last line, it potentially increases the size with property controlled by Dakota County. Would you mind elaborating what is property controlled by Dakota and
Yep.
what is not?
Yep. So if you can see the map, and I know it's kind of small, but there's a number 6 right here. There's some number 6. The property is owned by Dakota County. They acquired as part of the Argenta Trail project. They had, during that process, they had said that any remnant parcels would be turned over to the city. This would be considered a remnant parcel because they don't have any use for it. They don't need it for stormwater or any other type of county roadway transportation project. And so if we are successful in acquiring 7, we would likely work with the county to acquire 6 to make this a slightly larger parcel than the 6.4 acres that's shown in this map right here. So that number 6 is basically the rest of this triangle, if you will.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Again, with this piece of property, we did that high-level planning exercise. You can see the dotted lines represent a trail. You can see a space for a playground. You can see a space for a court. Here we show some on-street parking. Whether it would be on-street or whether we would build a parking lot is yet to be determined. But again, we just want to convince ourselves that if we own this piece of property, are we going to be able to put amenities that neighbors and residents are likely going to want as a part of the park system on this property? And generally speaking, I would say, yes, we can. So then going back up again, so now we're in the Argenta 70th intersection. Now we're talking about the southeast quadrant of that intersection. So here the progress isn't as good as it has been in some of the other quadrants. Staff had identified this piece of property as a potential park location. Our city council did not want us to talk to the property owner that owns property number 5. So we have not engaged in any conversations with that individual at this point in time. There is a possibility that there may be a remnant parcel or 2 up in this in the southwest corner of the Highway 3, which is on the far right-hand side of this picture in the 70th intersection, that Dakota County may have as a part of the 70th Street reconstruction that they'll be working on over the next year or 2. So that's a possibility that there may be a remnant parcel up here. We don't know what's going to happen with regards to development in the center part of this quadrant. And so maybe something will pop up in the future there. And while it's not desirable, there is a potential that we could do something along the trail in number 8. And while I don't have a picture of it, if you're familiar with that area and the trails there, this right here is a big hole, a big wetland, if you will. And the slope next to the trail is very steep. But if we were to build a significant retaining wall, level with the top of the trail and flatten it out and build a space that was 10 to 20,000 square feet, we could theoretically then put a playground in right there. That retaining wall would probably be a $400,000 retaining wall. But if we're unsuccessful in acquiring land, that is a possibility that we've discussed internally. It's not desirable because you'd have to walk to get to it. You couldn't drive to get to it. It would only be large enough for a playground. It's probably not what most people had in mind when they think about a park. It's certainly not what we as staff or the Parks Commission have in mind when we think about building parks. But if it ends up being all we can do, it is a possibility.
Hi, Eric. This is Samantha. I'm from the Robert Thomas neighborhood.
Okay.
Just a quick question. So
Yep.
these two neighborhoods over here in the southeast quadrant are the oldest neighborhoods. I think some of the people have been here 8+ years.
Yep.
So it's a little bit frustrating to hear that literally there's nothing potential. I submitted a question and asked, why not the lot across the street that McGough is willing to sell? Have you talked to them about selling that, since these options don't seem feasible?
Yeah, so I've got that question in the slide coming up here. So I will address that question if you don't mind once we get to that slide.
Thank you.
No problem at all.
Hey, Eric, this is Annette Maggi. I've had my hand raised. I don't know if you saw it, but
Sorry,
can
Annette.
you talk through, that's okay, you're busy talking. I'm curious if you can address how the future expansion of Argenta Trail impacts some of this, the widening of Argenta?
So Argenta Trail right now stops right about here. In the future, it's going to go north of 70th. And in the next couple of years, my understanding is it's going to be constructed to 65th Street. And then in the farther future, it'll go further north and connect to 494 through an interchange. So in the next couple of years, Argenta Trail will be constructed here between 70th and 65th Street, and 70th going east and west is going to be reconstructed and become a wider roadway as well. There's going to be property all along 70th that the county is acquiring for the transportation project. Much of that land is used for the road and or stormwater treatment purposes. Very little of what they're acquiring is going to be quote unquote leftover or remnant parcels. There is, and it appears that there's going to be 2 remnant parcels in the southwest corner of the Highway 370th intersection that we might be able to use for parks, but we're not sure at this point in time, and that's probably a year or 2 away at this point. Does that answer your question on that?
Yeah, and I don't, Eric, we haven't talked about this on Planning Commission in a while, but my understanding is that Argenta is widening at some point in the future. And so I'm just trying to understand, like that number 5 you showed, if you're going to widen Argenta, it's going to impact some of that, but I'd have to go back and look at my notes to see the exact section of Argenta. That's all right. We can figure it out later. I was looking at this, thinking about that. Where does it impact?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know the details of future plans for Argenta as far as the timing for when they might plan to make it wider than what the new Argenta looks like today. So here's kind of the question that Matt asked with regards to what might it cost to build a park. So there's legal fees, there's environmental studies, there's some administration things that the city need to do when we acquire property, and we're estimating or budgeting that's about $30,000 per park. The cost of land is, it varies. But from a budget perspective, we're saying land costs about $100,000 an acre. So if you buy 5 acres of land, it's $500,000. And we're going to need to hire a landscape architect to help us design the park. That will include public meetings where the public will be invited in to give us your thoughts and ideas about what you want to see the park become. Our landscape architect staff will take those thoughts and ideas, develop a couple concepts, and then we will come back to the public and say, here's some concepts. What do you like about these? Likely some people will like a little bit of concept A and a little bit of concept B, and we'll make a hybrid, and that will become our park plan. We'll put together some plans and specifications for that. And then we'll go out to bid and we'll start to build the park. From a development perspective, again, we're just making some assumptions here, but there's likely going to be some grading involved, likely going to be a court of some kind involved, a playground, some trails, possibly some parking, some miscellaneous expenses, benches, garbage cans, things like that. And so we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3, $1.4 million to develop one of these park sites. A lot of it rests on how much the land costs and what the actual amenities that might go into the park development itself might cost. Any questions?
So Eric,
Matt, does that address your questions?
Yeah, very much so, except for the rest of the budget. So if we've got 2.1 million, say this costs, 1.5 all in to put in a park, and we've got 4 quadrants here. First of all, number one, how are you going to determine which park to build first? And then where's the budget coming for the remaining 3 parks?
So our overall park plan has some assumptions that once the Northwest area completely develops, that we will have collected somewhere in the neighborhood of $19 million in park dedication. Our park plan also has an assumption that we're going to spend about $19 million developing parks in the Northwest area. So that's land acquisition, trails, and then the parks themselves. As we get further in discussions with landowners, we will have to have conversations with the City Council on how we can fund both the acquisition of the land and then the development of the parks. It would be premature for me to say how that's going to happen and what that's going to look like, but we will have to have some conversations with the City Council about potentially using some other funding sources, either in the long term or in the short term, so that we can acquire the land and start to develop some of these parks. I can't sit here today and promise you that we're going to develop only one park or that we're going to develop all of the parks. Those are conversations we'll be having with the Parks Commission and the City Council.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm trying to ask my questions in general terms here, because I think it's selfish of one neighborhood to push their agenda over others. Like you said, the folks over by Target have been here a long time, and they're probably been waiting the longest. Their kids are going to be graduating college before we get one of these parks. So what I guess the next general question is time frame. And that's a common question I got from all my neighbors was, say well, here you go. I'll let you get to it. Thank you.
No problem at all. So here's a probable timeline for park development. So we're sitting in the summer of 2020 right now. We're actively talking to property owners. We're actively trying to acquire some property. It's going to take us a few more months to get through that process. My hope is that we're successful on at least one of the locations we've talked about tonight, if not multiple locations. I would argue and urge the commission and the City Council to acquire land because it's being developed, and we only have one chance to acquire it for park purposes. So I think that probably is our number one priority, and then our secondary priority is to develop into a park. So hopefully we can finalize the purchase of some of these parcels into the fall of 2020, start to hire some landscape architects to help start the process of developing and designing the parks. Over the winter, hosting public meetings with neighborhoods, finalizing our park plans, developing park plans and specifications over the winter, and in the spring, bidding a project or two in a park or two on land that we've acquired. So next summer, hopefully, right, a year from now, we see some bulldozers up on one of these pieces of property, pushing some dirt around, putting in some playground equipment, shaping up some trails, building a court, whatever the case might be, so that by the fall of 2021 or the spring of 2022, we can actually have something that people can use. To some degree, some of these timelines might be a little bit optimistic. On the other hand, if we're able to get some movement on owning some land in the Northwest area in the next 30 to 60 to 90 days, I think some of these timelines are also realistic. So hopefully that can happen. Questions on the timeline that anyone might have?
Yes. I mean, it's really encouraging to see the dates are pretty close. But in a broad picture, you showed 5 parks. When we follow the presentation, it feels like all the 5 parks going to be there. So, in realistic, how many you think? Again, it's premature. I'm not going to take your word as is, but what do you think? What's your good guesstimate? We can get a 1 or 2 acquisitions.
Well, again, I would hope that we could acquire at least 2 of these locations. Then it's going to depend on how we can potentially finance some of the improvements that will be needed for the actual parks themselves. And those are conversations that we'll be having with the Parks Commission and with the City Council in the very near future.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Eric. This is Megan Holcomb. I have a quick question about the finance. So let's say that everything goes through smoothly with acquiring the property, but you don't have enough funds existing today. What would the plan be then? Because I agree with you, number 1 priority is acquiring land because that's going away very quickly.
Correct. So potentially there are other options the City Council could use, other funding the City Council could use for the development of these parks. They could theoretically do an internal loan from funds that the city has to the park acquisition fund, and we could potentially make improvements with other money that the city has, and we'd have to pay, the parks fund would have to pay that back as other developments happen in the Northwest area, because we're not done developing in the Northwest area yet. So we'll be collecting more park dedication in the years to come, and so that's a possibility as well. We have not started to have those conversations with the City Council yet, and so I want to be very careful about what I say and how I say it, because I'm not in a position to say how it's going to happen at this point in time.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on the timeline from a timeline perspective, or the funding perspective?
John Murphy, maybe a money question. Do we have estimates on potential park dedication funds coming in between now and say spring 2022?
The development that is proposed to be south and west of Blackstone Vista is something that's on the drawing board. It's run into some challenges. There's some potentially park dedication coming in there. Our community development director is working with McGuff, who owns the property across from Target. There's potentially some development there. I'm personally not aware of other concrete development plans in the Northwest area, but our community development department is getting contacted on a regular basis by developers, and so it's likely in the next few years there will be other developments that happen in the Northwest area that could help fund some of these improvements.
Eric, this is Annette. I'll just jump in there. There was also Planning Commission approved a comprehensive plan change to medium density residential, which would include another apartment building going in off of Highway 50. I would assume there would be park dedication there, but I don't know where that's at, if it's gone to council yet. So, but that's another property that's coming through on development.
Okay, thank you, Annette.
So our just quick follow up. So our 2.1 million sounds like our budget going forward for a while.
That's approximately what's in the 402 fund, or the Park Acquisition and Development Fund. That's approximately what's in there right now, or it was at the end of 2019.
Eric, Kelly Staples, I'm wondering if you're aware, I'm guessing you just said the end of 2019, so that balance would probably not include Settlers Ridge North dedication funds, right?
Probably not.
So that would be an extra 160 or so thousand?
Approximately.
I'm doing the math right. Okay.
Any other questions before I move to the next slide? All right. So I'm going to move to the next slide then. Whoops. Sorry. So I've got got this control bar. So what about, what about the property across from Target? So that is guided for commercial development. Our community development department is in conversations with the property owner McGuff about developing the site to grow the tax base. Really, the city wants that property to pay taxes to support all of the services the city needs to provide, whether that be police, fire, parks, administration, etc. So that's really what that property is guided for. And as residents and as a city, we need that property to be paying taxes. And that's what we're working towards.
Well, that's not entirely true because they're trying to get it zoned towards high density residential, not commercial anymore.
Yeah, so the community development department's in conversations with the property owner of developing the site to grow our tax base. And so that would include that as well.
So just as background, since we've been discussing this for years now, so you're talking about potentially putting in 600 to 1,000 more people, but the southeast quadrant of the northwest quadrant, you don't have any plans for a park.
We continue to work on it. We don't have anything solid at this point in time. Any other questions?
Eric, it's Kelly again. I'm just going to go ahead and ask. I mean, I don't know a lot about the history, especially with the developments over by Target, but if this 4-park concept has been in the plan since at least 2009, why didn't they ever get a park? What's the problem? Why is this something we're talking about in 2020 if it was a plan for the last 11 years or more?
So these homes right in this general area were built in the early 2007. I'm going to say between 2007 and 2009, maybe into 2010, roughly. Back then, Argenta Trail was following its current route, and so we wanted to put a park about where number 5 is. We didn't want to put one down here in the corner because we wanted to have one single park that was going to serve this whole entire area. Transportation's plans changed a little bit, and Argenta is going like this, and 70th is going like that. And so we're trying to serve the areas differently. Let's see if I can show something to folks here. I gotta get to my web browser if this thing will behave. Oh, I have to stop the share. So I gotta stop the share here 1 second. So this has been a challenge for us in the size of the developments that have happened. And everyone says, well, why didn't you just build a park when the development got proposed? So we've been talking about a 5-acre parcel. And we have approached developers during the planning process about taking their property for park development. Here's what I think this ends up being about 7 acres. So there's 6 acres right there. If we would have taken that 6 acres from this developer when they were developing, none of these houses would have been built, and that developer would have told us we can't make this development work anymore financially for them as developers. That's been the challenge for us to locate a park. These developments have been, they've been challenging because of the topography. They've been challenging because of the financial piece of it. And for the city to take, again, we were looking at between 5 and 10 acres. This shows you 6 acres. These houses don't happen.
Just to your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Got carried away. So again, this represents just under 6 acres. So if we would have taken this 6 acres, and I'm not saying that we would have taken this 6, it could have been a different 6. none of these houses would have happened. The developer would have told us, we can't make the development happen because we don't have enough revenue in the bigger picture of development. So that's been a challenge for us.
Eric, were you in your same position back when these developments were created?
I started working for the city in 2007.
Okay, so you had these conversations? I mean, you know this directly, or is this anecdotal information?
We've had a number of conversations with developers about acquiring property. Another one was this piece of property right here. A developer came in, they wanted to develop the site, and we said we would like to, they had a small cul-de-sac in this general area right here. There was like maybe 4 or 6 lots on that cul-de-sac. We said we want to take this piece of property for future parkland, and this wasn't the only reason that this development didn't happen, but one of the developer basically said, if you take that, then the entire development doesn't work for them. They had other challenges. I don't want to make it sound like it was because of we asked for a park, but that was a similar conversation. Then, how come it's not gonna, seems to be locked up. Oh, here we go. We had, so when this got developed, some of the questions were raised about why didn't we take parkland up here. We talked to the developer after the fact, and I said, if we would have taken 5 acres to develop a park here, my guess is you would have said the same thing that we've heard from other developers about when we've tried to acquire property. He said, yes, that wouldn't have worked for them because it financially, losing that number of lots just kind of puts their ability to make money through the development process. It just doesn't work for them. So that's been a challenge for us all along.
So given that that's been one of the biggest challenges historically, how moving forward do you overcome that? Because I don't see a situation where developers are suddenly going to say, yeah, you can go ahead and take our land, we're cool with that. So if as you move forward in these acquisitions, is it that you're focusing on pieces of property that aren't close to being developed, or what's going to be different moving forward?
So good question, and thanks for asking it. We are trying to change our tactic. In the past, our strategy was to work with developers on acquiring park property. Now we're working with the landowners directly, and that's why we're talking to landowners that have land that they haven't developed yet, so that we can own it before it becomes developed, and then we'll be able to control what happens with that land and be able to build parks. So we're changing our strategy, if you will.
Thank you.
I guess our understanding was the developers had the choice to either put in a park or pay the fee to the city, where the city would then take that money and build a park. So how can you take their money and not build a park, for example, with Robert Thomas in a decade?
We have taken their money. We've put it in the 402 fund, and we will be using it to build a park. It doesn't require us to build a park in the Northwest area, as an example. Theoretically, we could build a park anywhere in the city we would want to, or use it for an eligible expense anywhere in the city we would want to. That's not what we're going to do, but it's theoretically that could happen.
Eric, John Murphy, if we compare Inver Grove Heights to other cities, do you know if other cities negotiate with the developers, or do they tend to buy the land outright?
I think both strategies are used in a lot of cities, and it kind of depends on the size of the development and what the park needs of a community might be at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get to this next slide. And so what can residents do? I'd encourage residents to stay engaged in the process. Make sure that you come, if you're interested, make sure you come to some of the meetings that we'll be hosting over the next year. You can fill out an online survey. Again, you should be getting a copy, if you haven't already, of the city's latest Insights newsletter. And in there, there's a page on this process, and it talks about going to our website to click on a link to fill out the online survey. We also have a link to our social pinpoint site so that people can fill out comments there. Attend any meeting that we have related to our park planning process, or you can send me an email, give me a phone call with your thoughts and comments. As you do that, I'd encourage you to think not just about the parks in the Northwest area or what you want to see happen with regards to the parks in the Northwest area, but think about the entire parks and recreation system. So all of our parks, all of our trails, all of the recreation programs that we offer year round. Think about our community center and think about our golf course. Tell us what you think our strengths are. Tell us what you think our weaknesses are. I'd also encourage you to think about what are our opportunities. How can we improve our park and recreation system? What should we avoid doing within our park and recreation system? From your perspective, what's missing in our park and recreation system? And what should we start doing, or what should we stop doing? So here's 3 different ways that you can provide feedback. Again, you can go to our website and get these links, but we have our Survey Monkey that's out there where we're asking people to fill it out. We have our social pinpoint site where you can log in and fill that out. You can get very specific about different parts of town, different parks, different trails, etc. And or you can send me an email. So I want to thank everyone for participating this evening. Are there any other questions people have that I haven't provided an answer to yet?
Hey, Rick, this is Sandeep Guripalli.
Yes.
A quick question about reaching out to people. I actively follow you on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why don't I see the invites or calendar invites like this over your public platforms where more people are following you? It's tough to reach out to individual neighbors more in the area and tell, hey, we have a meeting today, rather than, how about a proactive approach by the IGH? Hey, we're going to have, I agree, you're sending through the mail. I got it. But, this is more electronic. These days, people not even touching the mail if it is not important, given the COVID situation, right? Now, I'm just hoping you will make it more reachable through your social platforms.
Yep, and so our communication staff is promoting the park system planning process on both Facebook and Twitter. For those that might not be aware, our Twitter handle is the @ and then IGH Parks. So if you haven't connected to @IGH Parks on Twitter, you might want to think about doing that. And then we're also on Facebook at Inver Grove Heights Parks and Recreation. So you can also obviously check our website for more information as well. And I can, and I will, and I think I started to do some connecting and liking and sharing of those posts that our communication staff is doing as well. But thank you for the comment and the question.
Eric, it's Kelly again. I have one hypothetical that's a question from one of the residents here in Settlers Ridge.
Yes.
And I apologize to the residents of the other developments because this won't pertain to them. But I'm wondering if there's a scenario where Dakota County and the 2 cities do manage to put together a project on the Cole property, and that becomes, sort of the park in our area at least. Would the city park department put any funds into getting safe access from like the Settlers Ridge and the new Settlers Ridge North development over there in like a pedestrian bridge or tunnels or anything like that? Would that come out of these funds, or is that something else?
It is something that could come out of those funds. That's part of why we're looking at a park in each of the 4 quadrants, because those roadways are going to be fairly busy. We don't think the average person is going to feel comfortable crossing those roadways. Our engineering staff, Dakota County's transportation staff, has already looked at and studied the potential underpass of future Argenta at or around 65th Street. And while you can build it, it's not feasible financially speaking. So we are always looking at ways to make sure that there's safe pedestrian access to what we're doing and wanting people to be able to get there safely. But again, it's also why we're looking at trying to put a park in each of the 4 quadrants, because of our concern for people's safety.
Thank you.
Again, Eric, this is Sandeep Gudipalli again. How actively Dakota County is participating in this, and how much of them they want to chip in if we are building something?
So I'm going to go back here a little bit. So Dakota County has been talking to the property owners of 1 and 2 for the last few years. The city and Dakota County have partnered on other projects in the past. If you've been down to Swingbridge Park, that was a partnership between the city and the county. The county has access to some resources that the city doesn't have to help build the regional trail, as an example. And so I think that there's a good chance that we can become partners in developing the park. Where a partnership may or may not go with the city of Eagan is yet to be seen yet, because they are also looking at acquiring some of the coal property on their side of the border, so to speak, in conjunction with Dakota County. So it might be, and it's a little too early to tell, but it might be that there's a sizable park in this northwest corner up here that is owned and operated by the city of Inver Grove Heights, the city of Eagan, and Dakota County. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility because all of the entities are involved in park planning and and interest in parks in that part of the city.
Okay, so that being said, if a park is built in 1 and 2, that's entirely by Dakota, and IGH doesn't have to share any costs?
Nope. Most of the park would be city park. The yellow line and probably 60 or 70 feet on either side of the yellow line would be considered a regional greenway. We haven't gotten into very in-depth discussions yet about Dakota County and what other things that we might partner on doing. But if I use the Swingbridge Park as an example, and if you're familiar with that, that's off of Concord and 66th Street. The city and the county have about a 17-acre parcel of property where we have the swing bridge. It goes out into the Mississippi River. There's a picnic shelter, a parking lot, a building with restrooms, and the city and the county cooperated in the construction of all of that. We cooperate in the maintenance and operations of all of that. And so I could see a model that we use there come to this part of our park system on properties 1 and 2 and be something similar. But we haven't had very in-depth conversations about that at this point in time yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you speak at all about property number 4?
I did not say anything about number 4, but I can. And again, property number 4 is located right here. The same folks own this entire corner, and the folks that own property 3 and property 4 did not want us to consider property 4. They were willing to continue to have conversations about the northern part of number 3, and so that's what we've been doing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions people may have?
Hey, Eric, this is Matt Peterson. Just wanted to say thanks. I know you've been putting a lot of effort into this, and we appreciate it because I know this has been a long time coming. And I know there's a lot of angry folks that want their park sooner than later. So we do appreciate your advocacy here, and keep us posted. I like the last slide that showed us what we can do. So whatever we can do, please do keep us posted, and we'll do what we can to help you out as well.
Yeah, I mean, you truly need to stay engaged in the process because it's residents' voices that make things happen. And so, again, I strongly encourage people to jump online, fill out the survey, jump online, do the social pinpoint, come to some of the meetings and make some comments and be engaged in the process. Email me every once in a while and ask if there's an update if you haven't seen something recently, so that you know what's going on and that you're on top of things. That's really how things get started, is when residents get involved and get engaged in what's happening. And so it's without residents' interest and input, a lot of this stuff doesn't probably happen.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
And I know that there's a number of very frustrated people that live, especially in the neighborhood just north of Target. I understand your frustration. I wish I had better answers. Right now I don't, but I can tell you that I am working on, and I shouldn't say I am, we are working on it, and hopefully we will come up with something in the near future. Any other questions at all? Well, I want to thank everybody for participating this evening. Again, encourage you to visit our website, fill out a survey, jump on social pinpoint, send an email, stay engaged in the process. It's the way things happen. And I appreciate everyone's attentiveness, all of your questions, your patience. And if there's any questions you have in the future, please don't hesitate to call. Please don't hesitate to send me an email, and I'm going to leave my contact information up right there so that you can take it down if you want to. And other than that, I'll leave that up for a few minutes, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you, Eric.
Question.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
Yes, Jessica.
Thank you. Just do you provide this PowerPoint presentation or the recording to residents? Will you post that somewhere on social media, or how will it be made available?
Yep, so hopefully I recorded this correctly this evening, and assuming I did, we will get it posted on our website, on our parks page, where we have more information about our park planning process. I'm sure that our IT staff is going to turn this into a YouTube video of some kind.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.